We're going to go ahead and reconvene the hearing, and appreciate y'all's patience as we work through votes. We do have some other members coming, but I'm going to recognize myself first for some opening questions. First off, I'm glad we're getting out ahead of this. In anticipation of a repeat from last year at some level, I'm glad that we're having this hearing now so that we can start addressing some of the issues. And I think the opening statements were great, provide a lot of information to us. One thing that concerns me is how the unaccompanied children tax the resources, not only of the federal government, with manpower that has to be used to secure the border or deal with the number of children and watching over those, but also the federal resources. But at the state level, we're seeing the state resources being taxed as well in Texas and the border states. And even right now, we're talking about relocation of some of these children to interior states like South Carolina and others. And so you're going to end up seeing those states recognize the taxing of their resources. When I was in Panama at the Summit of the Americas, I had a chance meeting with President Obama after the opening ceremony. And at that meeting, he and I had a chance to talk. And one of the things that we talked about was the fact that I'm probably one on my side of the aisle that support the financial assistance request of $1 billion. But I told him that, and I said, Mr. President, there's got to be accountability. And he agreed. He said, absolutely, there has to be accountability. And I think what we were both talking about when we talk about accountability is making sure the money gets to where the rubber meets the road, that it is not taken off in some amount at the top and with the governments there, that it's actually getting to where it's going to be do the most good. And that's why I think, Ambassador, that the Plan Colombia model is a great one. We talk about judicial assistance and rule of law and addressing confidence in the population in those countries with their judicial system, and that they're not going to have to pay a bribe to get out of jail, that there's actually going to be rule of law enforcement. I think that's so important. So I think accountability is important. What I'd like to address first off is potential vulnerabilities with what we're seeing as the Central America 4 or Border Control Agreement, originally signed in 2006, but implemented between Guatemala and Honduras just recently. So open border between those countries and what that may mean for law enforcement. And so I'm going to address my first question to General Tovo about, I get open border and the free flow of goods and commerce and people among those countries, but I think it creates some impediments to law enforcement. And I want to see how we're thinking about those impediments. If you've got those open borders for illicit drugs and smuggling of all kinds, and what that may or may not do to our law enforcement and to our national security. So if you could address that, and then I may come over to another gentleman. But General?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Certainly, the more open borders, the risk is that you can ease the flow for all, not just trade and commerce. One of the things that we've been doing in conjunction with others on the team here is particularly with the Guatemalans and Hondurans, is getting them together in what we call IATF's Interagency Task Force on either side of that border, to get them to cooperate more closely on intel sharing, procedures, and that's coming along. It's part of a recent agreement between the two presidents that they would have a shared mechanism. So IATF Chorty in Guatemala and then a similar JTF across the border in Honduras are now doing cooperative security work to open the border yet control the border. And so I think while we're at the nascent stages of that, I think that's a good sign that they recognize the potential vulnerability. They're taking steps to control the border in a proper manner. And then, of course, we're supporting their efforts through advice and assistance.
So do you think that potential enemies such as ISIS would try to exploit any of that open border across the whole Latin America or Central America region to some degree?
Chairman, I can't speak specifically to ISIS. At this point, I don't think we have any information that says that they specifically want to exploit these pathways. But it is our position at Southcom that given the pathways that exist, illicit pathways that move people, drugs, money, guns, et cetera, in multiple directions, that it's certainly a vulnerability that we ought to figure out how to address, and that we are addressing. And that's part of what we do with our partners, is help them develop their capacity to monitor and improve their ability to maintain domain awareness and then disrupt the networks with appropriate capability.
Right. Okay. Well, I've got you a different topic. Mr. Burson, I'm coming to you in just a second. But, General, the 250 Marines that are going to be stationed that I've read about, are they going to be under SOCOM's control?
Under Southcom.
Yeah, Southcom,
right.
Yeah.
They're under the command and control of our Marine component, MAR 4 South, and they'll be working closely with JTF Bravo in Honduras.
How are they going to be used?
Well, they've got several different elements. The ground element is going to be providing training to our partners in the region, things such as maritime or riverine operations, marksmanship, small unit training. The air element will provide general support, and then the logistics element will be doing a series of humanitarian assistance projects, working with our partners to repair schools and other facilities.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Burson, let's go back to the open border issue, and the question is, what efforts DHS has taken to mitigate any exploitation of Central America's loose border security measures? And so I'd love to hear your take on that.
Mr. Chairman, the way in which we used to look at borders in the past were strictly the lines in the map, the lines that separate one country from another, and the notion was that you do inspections at the line where the sovereignty shifts. I think what we understand about borders today, and we apply in a lot of our actions, and we expect the Central Americans to do the same in the context of the Guatemalan Honduran agreement, is to secure the flows of goods and people that are going back and forth. And it's not so much the inspection point at the sovereignty line, but it's the ability to exchange information and in a layered security fashion to be able to intercept high risk or malefactors who are crossing. So this is not about a free pass, but it is about recognizing that the Maya Shorty, for example, has a zone from 20 miles south of the sovereignty line, 20 miles north into Guatemala, and the idea is to exchange information, coordinate, and with the work that DHS is doing with the support of INL, in Honduras, for example, with the GOETS group, which is training Border Patrol agents, in effect, our Border Patrol agents, training Guatemalan Honduran Border Patrol agents. We expect to be doing the same in Guatemala. We think that this notion of securing the flow of people and the flow of goods in a layered security is going to be as effective as having a incomplete inspection point right at the line of sovereignty.
Right, and I appreciate those efforts. I don't mean to come across as negative for what Honduras and Guatemala are doing. I'm exactly opposite of that. I appreciate them working together in a bilateral agreement to facilitate trade and all that. I think that'll benefit both countries. Just to follow up, though, Mexico has increased their border security on that Guatemalan border. Are y'all involved in that, and how do you see that? I think it's effective from what I've read. How do you see it?
So in effect, and just to carry the point further on the Guatemalan-Honduran border, using Mexico as an example, actually Mexico's efforts on its southern border, Guatemala's northern border, involves giving a pass to Central Americans to go up into Mexico for a certain period of time under a border crossing card arrangement. Where there's a line drawn and the checkpoint and the security is at the Isthmus of Tehuantepec, there are other checkpoints, but at the Isthmus of Tehuantepec, the narrow part of Mexico, is where people are not being permitted to go further north. We have been working very closely with our Mexican colleagues in a whole variety of methods with regard to our southern border, Mexico's northern border. Many of those techniques, in terms of technology, in terms of layered security, in terms of training and capacity building, actually have been adopted by the Mexicans in their efforts that have, I think, shown great results on the Guatemalan border.
Right, and I think it's been effective. I want to applaud the Mexicans for recognizing that and stepping it up. I think the layered approach of Guatemala on their side, Mexico on their side, to stop it before it ever gets to that Texas U.S. border is very vital. I want to ask State Department, will any of the $1 billion for Central America be targeted to addressing this issue and preventing exploitation of the loose border security measures by bad actors?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are collaborating very closely in the interagency on exactly those questions. We spent about 18 months ago, we started talking about this subject, and we determined with DHS, with INL, with Justice, with others, how we might seek to address border security and also achieve the goals that we set for ourselves. And with Mr. Burson and his team, we're working very closely to try to identify exactly what those programs will be. So it's very much an integral part of what we're doing.
Right. Well, I appreciate that. You know, last year at the peak, we witnessed a Guatemalan Mexican river crossing. People were paying 80 cents to hop on a pallet on top of inner tubes and be paddled across into Mexico, and there were Guatemalan police that were right there. I mean, the videos were very, very clear, and it was less than $1. It was a very nominal fee. You saw people exploiting that situation to make money, but the porousness of that was very alarming to folks in my district, and so I hope we see a very active effort on behalf of on the part of Guatemalans and Hondurans and El Salvadorans and Mexico, which I think we are seeing. So I'm over my time, but we're going to come back for a second round. I'm going to recognize the ranking member.